Welcome, Yoseph, to Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's a privilege to have you here, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about Israel and your experience there.
First of all, good morning. Happy to be here. It's been a short but an amazing time here in New Zealand. And just a bit about my background. I actually was born in Haifa and raised in Nazareth. I am an Arab Israeli Christian. When I say that I was born in Haifa and raised in Nazareth, there is a reason why I always mention those two cities, because one, Haifa is the largest mixed city in Israel, where you have Jews and Arabs, whether they're Christians, Muslims, or Druze living in that city. And Nazareth is the largest Arab city in Israel, where you have Muslims and Christians living there. And that's exactly my childhood, I should say, because raised in Nazareth, but always, went back to Haifa because my family stayed there, my friends are there. So my childhood was among my friends who were Jews and Arabs from all the communities and societies of the Israeli society.
So what about apartheid? I thought Israel was an apartheid state, so they say. I mean, where does apartheid fit into this?
I'm happy to tell everyone that it's no more than a myth. Apartheid does not exist in Israel. I actually visited South Africa. That's where apartheid started, yeah? I think I have the best way to conclude my trip in South Africa. It was in the last meeting that I had in Johannesburg in the university. And I spoke among a majority of from the black community students. During that lecture, I showed them videos, statistics, real stories, day-to-day life of an Arab in Israel, with facts also about what's going on in Gaza and in the West Bank. After the lecture, just before I was supposed to finish, I said, I'm going to say a sentence. Please tell me, what do you think about it? Everybody was waiting in anticipation. What is the sentence that Yoseph is preparing us? And I said, now that you know the truth, now that you've seen the facts, I want to say, comparing the South African apartheid to the Israeli Palestinian conflict is actually doing injustice to the real people who suffered from real apartheid, to your people, to your grandfathers and mothers. Not even one single head did not nod with acceptance. That's where I understood that my journey to South Africa was very, very successful. Israel is not an apartheid state.
That's such a great point, and there's nothing like going to Israel to see for yourself.
100%.
Now, a lot of people talk about coexistence, and they hold this up. I hate this word. You hate this word. Why is that?
Well, a lot of people talking about coexistence when it comes even to Arabs who live in Israel and Jews who live in Israel. And I would say coexistence is a good definition to describe the relationship between the Israelis and the Palestinians, between the Israelis and the Jordanians and the Emiratis and the Egyptians. Okay. But I'm an Arab who is Israeli. And for me, the best way to describe the relationship between Arabs and Jews in Israel is by saying partnership. In Arabic, it's sharaki, and those who want, even in Hebrew, it's shutfut. Partnership. This is the best way to describe it. The partnership which exists every day in Israel, including right now while we're speaking here in New Zealand. So many stories that I can tell you that doesn't even arrive to the media or to the social media. Stories that will just leave you shocked. But for us, it's a routine.
Give us an example of one of these stories.
You know what? I'll give you the best example. Just to show how it doesn't matter eventually if you are an Arab or a Jew, if you're a Muslim or a Christian or a Druze. It's all about being human being. And that's the majority of the Israeli society. Extremists exist on both sides. Okay? The good news that they are minority of extremists. The bad news that they are loud and they're violent and they will do anything to silence voices like my voices. But I will not stay silent, and I will tell those stories. And one of those stories is about Maher Ibrahim. He's a nurse that still working in the Emek hospital in Afula, which is in the north of Israel. And during the Corona pandemic, he was, as a senior nurse, responsible for the Corona department in that hospital. At that day, one of the doctors in that department arrived to a patient there who had Corona, a very old patient. He was about in his mid-90s. And unfortunately, he did not have more than an hour, 2 hours to live. I should state that that person is a Jewish religious person, very religious. So the hospital called the family and asked the family to come and to say goodbye before he dies. His family was from Jerusalem. At that time, a little bit of snow was in Jerusalem, and everyone knows when there's a little bit of snow, that's it. Jerusalem is shut down. They could not arrive on time. And he was about to die without even seeing anybody, anyone of members of his family. Maher Ibrahim, he studied Judaism in Bar Ilan, at Bar Ilan University. So he understood how much it's important to come and say to a dying, especially if it's a religious Jew, to say Shema Israel before he dies. So the Muslim Arab nurse took the Torah or the Sefer Tehillim book, sat down next to that person, and he just said Shema Israel. An Arab Muslim from Israel sat down next to a Jewish religious Israeli, and he is the one that said Shema Israel on him. A few seconds later, he died. But he did not die before he heard Shema Israel. That's the partnership that exists in Israel every day. I have thousands of those stories, and right now as we are talking, more and more stories are being created.
Well, that's such a great example, because what it shows is that you've got an Arab Israeli who not only understands the Jewish culture and the Jewish religion, but understands the language enough to be able to read the prayer. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, so the Arab Israelis study Hebrew from age 8 until age 18. It's a mandatory to learn Hebrew, and this is actually a way to get your diploma after high school. After that, we go to universities, and the language that we speak is Hebrew. So the majority of the Arab Israelis speaks Hebrew. A lot of the Arabs speak Hebrew very well as well. This is one of the things I try to work on the other side. For instance, as a CEO of an Arab Israeli organization, which called Together Vouch for Each Other, our mission is to bridge gaps between Jews and Arabs. And I've always said that to the Jewish community when I meet students or anybody from different communities in Israel. I tell them, language is a great way to bridge gaps between cultures. That's why I'm trying to push the Arabic language for Jewish students as well, just like we learned that. I can tell you that the comments that I've been getting from the Jewish society is that they are not only in favor and support that, but they actually want to do that. Part of the project that we're doing, and this is amazing, I started advocating for the Arabic language, and one of the teachers, who is a Jew but he teaches Arabic, he contacted me and he said, let's do a project together. I want to teach Arabic to the Jewish community as well as a Jew. And I said to him, let's do that. That project started about 7 months ago. He was by himself. Today, he has 7 more teachers because he cannot hold any more students. So there is a request to learn the Arabic language. And I really think that any or every Jew in Israel must learn Arabic for 3 simple reasons. 1, unfortunately, the enemies around us, that's the language that they speak. 2, the Abraham Accords opened the new possibilities with new Arab countries like the Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco. And 3, and the most important one, 20% of the population in Israel are Arab Israelis, and this is our mother tongue language. Speak that language. That's the best way to bridge gaps.
Reflecting a little bit about the way we see things in New Zealand. A lot of New Zealanders look at the Israeli-Palestinian situation
Yeah.
and see it from our perspective, which is that of settler colonialism. So they'll look at the Israelis and see them as foreign colonisers and the Palestinians as the indigenous people who have been dispossessed by these foreigners. What do you say to that kind of narrative?
I always ask them the question, so tell me, from when to when Palestinians were in the land of what we know Israel? I'll ask, when was the establishment of the Palestinian state? When the Arab Palestinians came to the land of Israel. Now, if they say 3,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago or whatever it is, they would be lying, because the Arab conquest to the land of Israel started only in the 7th century, which means it's not possible. Now, again, we can go and divide this answer actually to two. People who believe in religion and people who do not believe in religion. In any case, they don't have any case. Because if you go to any of the holy book, whether it's the Torah, Tanakh, or whether it's the Bible or the Quran al-Karim, in any of them, it shows evidence to the fact that Jews were in that land 2,000 and 3,000 and 4,000 years ago. So you'd see it obviously in the Tanakh, you would see it obviously in the Bible. For the Christians among us, you know, there's a simple phrase says, he came to his own and his own denied him. We were talking about Jesus 2,023 years ago from now. And the question is always, came to his own. Who is own? Who we are referring to? And his own is the Jewish people, which is evident to the fact that the Jews were in that land thousands of years ago. So, in terms of religion, and in the Quran al-Karim, you have mentions of Bani Israel, the sons of Israel, and the fact that God told Moses, you will come to the land, or you enter the land when you manage to beat the people who are in that land. So you'd see that it's stated there. It exists in all holy books. Jerusalem was never mentioned in the Quran, not even one time. So based on all what I just said, you can see that any religious debate, it's just easy to prove it. Now, some people will come and say, Yoseph, I'm not a religion person. I don't believe in any of it. I said, okay, no problem. Let's talk history facts. And based on the history facts, the word Palestine, Palestina, yep, it actually came as a punishment to the Bar Kokhba rebel from the Roman colony. That's what happened. Go to the history, any book, you would see that. I'll tell you more than that. I have a video asking Arabs from the West Bank and from Gaza, you chant Palestine, Palestine, Palestine will be free. Please tell me from where the name Palestine came and what is the meaning of Palestine. None of them answered the question. They have no idea what the meaning of Palestine. And by the way, Palestine is actually a Roman word, and the meaning is it of the cities of the shore, which gives an implement for the cities that were on the west of Israel or the beaches. That's the meaning. That's what it says.
And do you feel as an Arab that you have been dispossessed by these Jews that came in and invaded your country?
No, first of all, there is a valid point, okay? When some come say, and say, I had a land, and because of that war, I don't have the land anymore. This happened throughout the history, the entire history of the land of Israel. When it started by the Roman colony to the Ottoman power or control to the British mandate and the Arab conquest. Everyone. So based on that, okay, based on that, we can say that when the Arab did the conquest, they took the lands from whom? And we should ask them how they feel as well. Let me clarify, okay? So 1947, the partition plan was brought by the UN. And what happened is that the Jews accepted the plan, the Arabs denied the plan. And by the way, watch this. It's not the Palestinians, it was the Arabs who denied the land, the partition plan. It was the Arabs, the Arab leaders who decided to reject the plan. Which gives you just a little bit of understanding how even at that time did not even refer to the people in the land as Palestinians, but as Arabs and Jews. The Jews accepted the plan despite the fact that it was much more smaller and without any natural resources. And because of the rejection of the Arab leader, the war began and they lost. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this, because I want to talk about my grandfather. My grandfather got an order to evacuate and get out of his village. Not by the Jews, by the Arab leaders from Syria and Lebanon. My grandfather rejected this request or demand back then. And he stayed and he said, I'm staying in my land. And when the IDF came, no one took his land. I'm speaking specifically about my grandfather. I'm not saying there weren't events like this. I'm just giving you my grandfather's story. And he said, I stayed in my village, which is Ijjish. It's a village in the north of Israel. So he stayed there. And that's exactly how I become who I am today, which is an Arab Israeli. And you know what? I'm very glad about that.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating because you don't hear those stories very often. You only hear about the ones that were so apparently dispossessed. But to hear that actually some Arabs decided they wanted to stay and keep their land.
The majority of the Arabs who left the land of Israel were getting the orders to leave the land by Arab leaders, whether it's from Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, or Egypt. They're the ones who actually went on and just evacuated based on those orders. Again, saying that, we still have to understand that in a war, like in a war, there are terrible things that happens to both sides, and we should acknowledge that. By acknowledging that, we can actually move forward. That's my message, I guess.
So the 20% that stayed,
Yes.
Tell us a bit more about that.
So actually, this is a really good way to talk about the myth of the genocide and the ethnic cleansing. You know, in 1948, there were 156,000 Arab Israelis. Today, we are 2 million. But there's a lot of people come and say, oh, Yosef, you know what? Don't talk about the Arab who live in Israel. Don't talk about the Arab who has the Israeli passport and the Israeli ID and that they live equally under the law. Talk about the Palestinians in the West Bank and in Gaza. That's where the genocide happened. Now, I'd say it's funny because in 1948, since the establishment of the Israeli state, in Gaza, in 1948, there were 100,000 Palestinians. Now there are 2 million. Doesn't work really with the genocide, not really. And in the West Bank, according to the Palestinians, there are 3.4 million Palestinians. And if you heard me saying, according to the Palestinians, so I don't want anybody even to believe me when I say this. I'd go to them, just Google the document from the Palestinian Statistic Office that shows, since they started counting 30 or 40 years ago, not even one single village, town, or territory, there is a decrease in the population, only increase. Doesn't work up. Do you know what genocide is? It's what happened in the Holocaust. There were 9.5 million Jews in Europe. By the end of the Holocaust, there were 3.5 million Jews. That's genocide. This is ethnic cleansing. So when you come and say that about Israel and about the Palestinians, I'm sorry, but you're only an imbecile because you don't know the facts.
Exactly. So you actually served in the Israeli Defence Forces, didn't you? And as an Arab, was that an unusual choice? Why did you decide to do that?
So in 2003, I can tell you, yes, I was among the few that actually volunteered and served. We should say that Arab, Israelis, Christians, and Muslims, they are not obligated to serve in the army. I decided to serve. You know, first of all, it's in the name. It's not the JDF. It's not the Jewish Defense Forces. It's the IDF. It's the Israeli Defense Forces. And I'm an Israeli. And I would never forget the time I decided to volunteer. One of my friends came and asked me, are you sure this is the path that you want to take? And I said, 100%. A month and a half before my beginning of my service, something terrible happened in Israel. And I said, obviously, unfortunately, but because of that terrible event, my decision to join the IDF became 1,000,000%, not even 100%. On the 4th of October 2003, a Palestinian female suicide bomber came to the restaurant, the Maxim restaurant in Haifa. It's a restaurant co-owned by Arabs and Jews. She blew up that restaurant, ended up killing 21 Israeli civilians, Jews and Arabs, injuring more than 50 Jews and Arabs. My parents were in that restaurant 4 days before that attack. Imagine what happened if the terrorists would come 4 days earlier, or my parents would have gone to the restaurant 4 days later. I would be without a parent. And for me, knowing that I'm going to serve my country and my society, which is the Israeli society, both Arabs and Jews, it was the right thing to do. And indeed, after a year, I became a commander, which is another way to talk about the myth of the apartheid. Yeah, I, as an Arab, serving in the IDF, was a commander over Jewish soldiers, and they had to obey every command that I give them. But you know something? It was very simple and easy. You know why? Many people ask me, how did they accept you in the army as an Arab? Certainly, back there in 2003. And I said, it's an interesting question, because not only they accepted me, but they respected me more than anybody else. And why? Because they are obligated to serve. I chose to volunteer and serve. So they saw that as something more superior than anything else at that time, or at that time where we were serving together. And for them, they respected it even more. And that's why my soldiers not only obeyed the commands, but respected everything I told them to do. And the atmosphere between us was incredible. They trusted me, I trusted them when we fought terrorism. And you know what? We succeeded. We succeeded. Every time we needed to do a mission, we did it on the best way.
That's great. What a great story. And what I'm hearing is that you strongly identify as an Israeli. That's your identity.
Arab Israeli. Proud to be an Arab, proud to be an Israeli.
So what do you say to the person, and we get this a lot, you know, here at the far ends of the earth, the people who will justify terrorists because they're fighting for supposedly a just cause?
There is no justification to kill innocent people, point. There is no justification to kill IDF soldiers when the D is the defense forces, not the attack forces. If any of those terrorists or any of those people who come and attack Israel do not attack Israel, they won't get attacked. So, no justification to kill any innocent citizen, and there's no justification to touch any IDF soldiers. When the IDF goes to operation, it goes to operation because we know that there are a squad of terrorists coming to murder Jews and Arabs. And those who don't know that, then I got 3 names for them just in the last year. Amir Khouri, Yazan Falah, and Asil Swaid. An Arab Christian, Christian, Arab Druze, and Arab Muslim. Both of them are victims of the Palestinian terrorist. Terrorism does not discriminate between us, Arabs and Jews who live in Israel. So they can be silent when if anyone comes and tell me, oh, there's a justification for that. What battle? What battle to kill 2 Jewish people because the Jews, while they were in traffic, shooting them with 12 bullets from a 0 range.
So what hope do you see in the future for this conflict with the Palestinians, where there is this culture of hatred which is cultivated from babyhood right through society? What hope do you see for the future?
2 things I want to say about it. One, in order for us to move on and actually resolve the conflict, the other side should recognize Israel and understand that Israel is not going anywhere. The sooner they do that, the better, because then we can actually move to the next stage. But how can we even talk about the next stage when I get chance, when I come to speak about the reality of Israel and the reality of an Arab citizen who live in Israel, and when they chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, or we don't want 2 states, we want all of it. What does that mean? It means the destruction of Israel. So they keep chanting that, yeah? And Israel is keep, progress from a year to year to year. And one more thing about that before I go to the second part of my answer. They also chant intifada. For those who don't understand what intifada means, I'm not going to give you the literal meaning. I'm going to give you the factual meaning. When you chant intifada and you want intifada, it means the death of Jews and Arabs in Israel. But it also means more death on the Palestinian side. So when I hear Americans or Europeans or here chanting intifada, intifada, it's so convenient for them to chant that because it's not about their life, huh? Because after that, they're going to go to the pub and drink and continue their life in a democracy. That's nice. But the people in Israel and the people in Gaza or in the West Bank, they're the one who's suffering from chants like this. Be aware. That's what we told them. To my second part of the answer, the Arab Israelis are the answer to end that conflict. Obviously after the first stage, because as long as they do not recognize Israel as a state, we're not going to advance and we're not going to go anywhere. But if they do that, we can actually move on to the next stage. And I really believe that us as Arab Israelis who are proud to be Arab, proud to be Israelis, when we're fully integrated in the Israeli society and in Israel in general, we would be actually the one to begin the end to that conflict. That's how I see it.
Well, all power to you, and we wish you the best for that struggle and for your venture and what you're trying to do in Israel. It sounds amazing. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.